Hi everyone, today we did get another consolidation day down to that 200 area, bounced a little bit lower high setup, and then it looks to be like we are selling here in the after hours, but let's take a look at all of the charts as we head into tomorrow's trading. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, we got United Airlines earnings. We talked about it yesterday, and the CEO did come out and say the world seems to be less uncertain. We kind of knew this, as Delta said that more customers were looking for higher value seats like first class and business class, and that pushed the entire airline industry higher, and this is no exception here. Now United says they are expected to earn $9 to $11 this year, down just a smidgen from their initial estimates, but overall still pretty good. You can see down just a smidgen after hours, but overall I believe that the airline industry is going to be strong. You can see they mention it here, Delta Airlines reinstating that full year guidance as everything seems to be picking up for them. Earnings per share still did beat expectations. Revenues pretty much in line with expectations. So overall not bad. Revenues rising 1.7%. I wouldn't say this is a long-term buy by any means, but in the short-term trading, I think there is certainly opportunity within the airline industry as a whole. And this does speak to the broader economy. If United believes there is less uncertainty, I do believe that is going to propagate to many other of the industries here in the US economy. Also, in case anybody was wondering, Trump did deny that he plans to fire Powell. It says it's highly unlikely. Doesn't want to use the superlative and say that he will not do it for sure, but he said it's highly unlikely. Just in case anybody believes this, he is now knocking it down. I don't think anybody really believed that he was going to fire Powell, and I do believe it would be challenged very aggressively if he did. Wouldn't shock me if Powell did step down to some degree, but I just don't believe this is going to happen. I don't think it's good for markets. I don't think it's good for really anybody. Let him finish his term next year and replace him with someone better if he thinks he can do it. But so far, I think Powell's fine. I think he might be a little bit behind on the current cut, but I don't think that is massively detrimental to markets. And I think Trump just hates it because they are spending gobs and gobs of money and it's costing the government even more money. But you could always mitigate that by spending less money, which of course they will never do. Moving over to fear and greed, 74 from a 73, supposedly down from a 75 a week ago. You can see this continues to kind of flatline here. Neutral now on momentum. Strength, no movement. Breadth, no movement. We'll look at the shorter time frames here. This is the 200. I do believe the short time frames are starting to break down quite a bit. Put call ratio coming up a little bit off of that very low level. Volatility continues to come up there. We'll take a look at that later as well. Safe haven manned, a little bit of a step up, surprisingly there, and then junk bonds continues to crater extreme greed. So again, lots and lots of greed in markets. Generally a time to take profits. We talked about it yesterday, and that is still my thesis today. Moving over to the earnings calendar here, you can see still lots and lots of green. J&J beating on both. Bank of America also beating. Morgan Stanley also beating. Goldman Sachs continues to do well, and then you can see United Airlines beating on the bottom line, missing on the top just a smidgen like we talked about. Tomorrow you do get Netflix after hours, GE Aerospace, Travelers. Also want to see how they're doing. PepsiCo, one of those key staples to watch. And then as we get into Friday, really it's just American Express, 3M, and SLB. Moving over to the economic calendar, PPI came in at 0 on both of these. This is very good for the read, and you can see the previous number was revised up a little bit. Don't love that, but the numbers here today way below expectations. I would suspect this is part of the reason that we did get just a little bit of a retracement here today, but overall good there. And then for tomorrow, we do get core and headline retail sales. It'll be interesting to see if we recover at all from those super negative numbers that we got on last iteration. Philly Fed manufacturing also continues to be negative and expected to be negative, so that'll be interesting as well. So continuing to watch those, as well as Atlanta Fed GDP tomorrow, and then really nothing here for the Friday, just some soft Michigan data. Then looking at Max Pain, remember this is an option, this is an expiration week. We are expecting a bigger move down here for the Friday. Max Pain is 2.5% lower from current price. Are we going to get a Max Pain finish? I think that still remains to be seen. Tomorrow, not much movement expected, but for that Friday, that is the interesting move. What are we going to get? And then you can see some really big negative numbers further out here. July 30th, down 11%. I don't think we'll see that, but it's not impossible, and even the further out you go, there are some pretty big numbers, down 3%, down 7%, down 4%. So if we get any of these numbers actually happening, markets do have a lot of downside potential to go, so just keep that in the back of your mind. Moving over to the charts here, you can see we did get a lower low, pushed right to that level. 617.90 was the zone, and the low of day was 618.05. So within 20 cents of that area, we did catch a bounce back into here, holding that 8 EMA, surprisingly, 623.45. Still in the same consolidation, still cannot get above 625.90. We tested it yesterday, big rejection outside reversal day. Momentum bearish, continues to look bearish there. RSI still bearish, and then you can see it here on the hourly chart. Looks like a topping pattern. We're just waiting for this 200 to catch up, which could be another day, maybe 2 days, and then I would expect this to start to break down a little bit more. And then looking at the volume profile here, over the last couple of weeks, you can see tons and tons of volume coming through at this level, expecting selling out of that volume. And then the next volume zone is down here around 595 to kind of 600 area in here. So would expect it to move through here fairly quickly if we did get into that zone. And then this next consolidation would be where the next zones of support would be. So just keep that in mind. If we get through this kind of 617 area, expecting a pretty fast move through to that 600 area. Then moving over to the SPY charts here on the hourly, you can see we did get to that lowest ATR band yesterday. Makes sense that we had just a little bit of a bounce, but then we held bearish conditions here, which is important. Your bearish trailing stop there is 625.11, didn't even touch it, and then we did reject a little bit from there. Your ATR band to the downside is going to be around 618.33, and I would expect this to kind of downtrend as we go. Did get a big volume spike on that dip low. I would say this is probably a stop hunt. The people that were long through this last rally did get stopped out based off of this low here, I think is probably why we saw a big stop hunt there. But that's what I'm calling this. I think this is an initial test, wiping out some of those orders. Did get a nice buy out of it, and now you're expecting this to kind of roll down, in my opinion. And then looking at the 4-hour chart, you can see that trailing stop did get tested, but we are still technically in bullish conditions, so not quite broken yet. Did see volume come through at that level. That was your 55 EMA on the 4-hour chart, which was 619.22. Moving over to the NASDAQ here, the NASDAQ was very, very slightly positive, and look at that candle. We gapped up to this current level, completely doji, unchanged on the day, just 2 giant wicks in each direction. You don't see that very often. Absolutely insane to see that, and just a lot of indecision. But of course, we are selling a little bit after hours. We are right at the level, closed on it to the penny. 557.29 was the level. We talked about it yesterday. We closed on it to the penny, and then seems like we're selling here just a little bit after hours as expected. You can see it here on the hourly chart, dipped low, hit that 200, just like we talked about on the SPY charts. And you can see RSI looking quite weak. Didn't get anywhere near these highs here. It looks like it's going to break through that SMA. I would say this is going to turn bearish here, but that's just a little bit of my bias. We came up, rallied right to the level, rejected here. You can see that selling in the after hours. I do think that that is going to have some follow through. Is it going to break structure right away? Probably not. And actually the NASDAQ chart does look a little bit better than the SPY charts, hanging in there a little bit better, but that is a key level. Continues to look not so good at that level. Really, I want to see this push to the 21 EMA down here around 546. That would be interesting. And then we probably get a little bit of a bounce from here and then get that bigger drop if it's going to happen. Or maybe we just pull back to that 21 like we did here, and then you get that bigger continuation, certainly possible as well. But for now, expecting at least a retest of that 21 EMA, which from current prices is at least 2% lower. Moving over to the Qs here, you can see we did test that trailing stop here as well. 551.84 was that level, and then we finished right in the middle of the range. This still looks like sideways consolidation for me. And then looking at that 1-hour chart, of course, we are still here in bearish conditions. Didn't get anywhere near the trailing stop, 559.21. As long as this continues to stay in bearish conditions, I think I'm going to try to stay bearish here. Of course, it's been a long consolidation. You can see flipping back and forth, but I think this is likely to hold here. We did get that outside reversal day, did get a slight continuation lower, and I do believe there is more continuation lower to come. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow here, you can see the Russell did go much, much lower, hit that 21 EMA, and then bounced from there. 217 was that level, bounced into the middle of the range, couldn't get above 221.50. Now you can see we're selling just a little bit after hours. So this is kind of what I'm expecting on the rest of the charts. Sell to the 21, maybe we get a little bit of a bounce, double top, lower high setup, something like that, and then we see that bigger breakdown to some lower lows. But for now, got the bounce here, waiting to see what happens. If the 21 breaks to the upside, you could still trade this a little bit bullish. The structure is still very much bullish with this kind of upward moving price action here, but I do believe that this is a topping pattern. You had a test of that 226 level. Since then, everything's been terrible, and yesterday was also very terrible. So expecting this to kind of sell here a little bit more. And then looking at the Dow, close to that 21 EMA. The interesting thing here is this looks more like a bull flag. You can see this kind of flag set up here. Maybe you get a little bit of a break here. This is something to watch. I don't really expect it to end up forming a flag and breaking higher, but just something to keep an eye on. I'll put that structure on there for you, and we'll continue to watch it as we go through the next week or two. Moving over to the MAG 7 here. The MAG 7 continues to hold right in this same zone that we've been. We did hold above the level again, 330.76, but we're not going any higher. This is still very much consolidation in this zone. And as long as the Mag 7 is not leading us higher, I just don't believe that we can go higher. So everything I do expect to get sold until we can see the Mag 7 get above 338.34. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft, Apple was slightly positive as well, up 0.5%, still in the same zone. I still believe this is going to break down from here, but it's hanging in there quite well, still holding the trend, still below 211.55. We'll see if this breaks here soon or not. Momentum very, very close to bearish conditions, continues to downtrend here. I do believe we're going to see something like this where we get at least a swing into bearish for a little bit, but hasn't happened quite yet. We're still holding quite well at this zone of resistance. And then you can see Microsoft still continues to hold this structure very much bullish, down just 20 cents on the day, but drifting a little lower after hours. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA, Tesla continues to be pretty hard to put your thumb on here. You can see I was expecting this to break down a little further into this 302 area, but we ended up gapping up slightly, getting back above 313.80. If you bought the 313.80 area, then you were looking for 324, 325 zone. Got very close to that. Wouldn't shock me if you took profits. That's going to be 323.50 at the high. So not quite there, but it does look a lot better, like it's hanging in here on this structure. Can it push to this upper trend in here? Around 344, certainly possible. Momentum did flip to bullish, RSI did flip to bullish, so this does look a lot better here today than it did yesterday. If it can hold these gains and break 324.50, that is a nice opportunity in my opinion, but that remains to be seen. Everything seems to be drifting a little bit lower after hours. And then NVIDIA basically unchanged on the day, up just 60 cents. Still have this kind of gap up. If we get a gap down here, that could be interesting, but obviously I wouldn't bet against NVIDIA. This is the strongest stock in the markets right now, continues to be an absolute rocket ship. Moving over to Alphabet and Amazon, these continue to do exactly what we thought they were going to do. So you're in this kind of rising wedge pattern here. We did get a bit of a breakdown here. Does this go to the 21 EMA at 218, 219 in here, and then break from this structure? If Amazon breaks, I do believe there's going to be a lot more downside. That would also be a high, lower high setup in here. Not 100% sure if we're going to see this kind of culminate, but usually you get some kind of big spiky up move and then it gets rejected and you break structure to the downside. That hasn't happened yet, and this does look a little bit weak already. And then looking at Alphabet, still really struggling with that 185.22 level. We talked about it yesterday and we continue to talk about it. That is a zone of resistance. We've now tested it 2 days in a row. Does not seem to be able to make it to that upper trend line. This seems to be failing here. So if that fails, then this is likely to be headed back towards this kind of 150 to 161 zone in here. Moving over to Breadth. Breadth actually held pretty well. We did go a slightly lower low there. You can see on both of these. Structurally, this continues to look quite bad, but we did bounce back into a slightly positive candle, back above 51.75 here on 20-day, back above 62.25 here on 50-day. So I still believe this is the start of a bigger down move. I still believe this is a structural break yesterday, and I still think we will get more continuation. It's just not necessarily going to be in a straight line. Moving over to 200-day Breadth here, you can see 200-day Breadth actually did sell off a lot yesterday. We didn't talk about it, but it was a big down candle off of this structure here. Big down to this next support around 54.69. We were below this low here. Tested that level once again. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. I still believe this is going to sell at least into this zone here around 48.49. But for now, bounced just like the other 20 and 50-day breadths. Moving over to the dollar did do exactly what we thought it was going to do. Touched that 55 EMA, had a major reaction, engulfed the previous candle briefly, came down to that 200, took out a ton of stops, I'm sure, and then we did get a massive bounce, kind of holding structure in here. If it holds in here, you could see a continuation, but it was a little extended in the short term. Is this going to kind of sell back down into this 200 area? It wouldn't shock me if it did. Either way, though, I do believe this is going to ultimately be a change in structure, and we're going to see this continue to remain slightly bullish here. Momentum is bullish, RSI definitely bullish. It just seems like it got a little bit ahead of itself. You still have some zones of resistance to the upside, mainly that 55 EMA for now, 98, 88. If we get a massive push through there, would expect a bigger move, something similar to this, right, where you get consolidation, tested this zone, and get a big push through here. Then if you see even any kind of pullbacks, you would expect bigger continuations to the upside. So just continue to look for that 55 EMA. Once we get a break of that, I think that's going to be a major mover here for the dollar. Moving over to bonds. Bonds still look good, and they actually looked a little better here today. Did go slightly lower on J&K, but this looks a little bit kind of like a bull flag now here on J&K. Continues to hold in here. Momentum stepping back to bullish. Interesting. TLT also positive on the day, about 12 cents through a wick to this area. Held in here. Higher low setup potentially. Drifting a little lower after hours, but momentum still bearish. RSI still a little bit bearish. I still believe this is an opportunity, and we'll see if it continues to bounce from here or not. Moving over to the VIX. VIX threw a big spike up through that 1850 level, almost getting to the 20 level. High of day was 1948. I still believe we're going to at least touch the 20. Still believe we'll get at least to this kind of 2050 area, maybe as high as 22 or so, right at the high of this zone from mid-June. Do we get a spike into this kind of 28 to 29 area? That is the bigger question. I believe it's going to happen. I don't necessarily think it's going to happen this week or maybe even next week, but ultimately I do think we'll see this within the next 3 to 4 weeks at the most. Moving over to my accounts, I did go a little bit negative on the day because I did decide to take off those shares, and then it ended up being a positive day. So I took them off around 555.50, which is still a pretty good trade. I think I got into those shares around 539. So nice trade from 539 to 555 on 200 shares of the Qs. And then you can see I do still have this covered call here, which was slightly negative on the day, but still open profits on this. I still believe we are going to continue to sell. You can see we're down still after hours about 75 cents. Want to see that continue lower here tomorrow, but I am a little bit bearish going into the options expiration, and I do believe we will see a breakdown of this topping pattern, which is starting to culminate here and starting to get a little bit more aggressive on those tests of some lower low areas. So keep it in mind. I am fully bearish here at this point, and if you haven't taken profits, highly suggest that you do. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of United Airlines. Comments: is the future of the US economy a little bit less uncertain? Is the airline industry finally a little more confident in their business model? And what do you think of Jay Powell? Will he stick it out until 2026, or will he end up resigning? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.